Quicker than a ray of light, we're back at you with our new episode. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
This week we will be diving into the queen of pop herself, Madonna, and her 1998 album Ray of Light, one of her most successful albums. And it's an interesting time, I think, to talk about Madonna. She's been finding her way into the news quite a bit lately, actually, because of her. Unfortunately, she was in the hospital pretty recently with what it sounds like septic shock, but she is appears to be on the mend. Her tour was postponed, but she's out and about. She actually made it to the Renaissance tour with her daughters, so
Nice.
it's good to know she is still kicking and just doing well. That's just what we like to see. And with that, yeah, why not? That's, I think, a great time to celebrate something that she gave to us 25 years ago, but I think still resonates and holds up today, most importantly.
I agree. It does still resonate. It still lives up. I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to Madonna. Of course, I learn more and more about every artist as we break them down together. I'll just start off by saying this was a totally unexpected sound, feeling, just a wild look into Madonna that I wasn't expecting. And the reason I feel like it still resonates to today, minus some of her, sometimes she goes back to her old ways every once in a while, but this really speaks as a very adult album from an adult Madonna. Not to get too hard into it, but it's definitely a mature Madonna that we see here. And I think that's one of the reasons why it really still resonates. This isn't baby Madonna.
No, and I think it was quite a shock if we're going to go back to the 90s, to that time. It seems like this was a shock for a lot of people because it's like the album was even promoted as being a side of Madonna no one has seen before, and people thought, well, what haven't we seen by this point?
Of course.
I mean, because by this point, she'd been around for 15 years at this point. It's like we've seen it all. What else can she do? But life events can certainly change people, and that was what happened in 1996. Madonna became a mom for the first time. Material girl to material mom, as they called it. Obviously, this changed her, but of course, when you're Madonna, you're not just gonna stay at home all day with your kid. You're gonna do something because you're a restless creative spirit when you're Madonna. And that was what happened. She naturally, with a new baby, but she just got back to work and was just feeling inspired and seeing things in a different way, being a mother. Now it just opened up this new dimension. And she reached out to some old collaborators very early in the process. And not all of their work ended up really making the album. Babyface, they did not make it, which definitely... maybe not taken well by everybody, but definitely shows she was definitely wanting to do something very different and really something not really commercially proven, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, there's sounds on this album as far as the musicality that resonate with 90s sounds and 90s compositions, but you're right. I don't think this had been proven in 100%, especially not by Madonna.
No. And early on, it seemed like she was going in a more, I guess, traditional, what would be expected of her. But then she connected with this guy, William Orbit, who was a big figure in the UK underground rave scene. And he'd previously remixed Justify My Love, but she just loved his sound and thought it was something different. And she thought like he would be the right producer for these new songs she was working on, even if they were written with proven pop hitmakers like her longtime collaborator, Patrick Leonard, and Rick Knowles, who'd worked with Stevie Nicks and Belinda Carlisle. She really knew this guy was going to be it. And it didn't actually get off to that great of a start because they had such different working styles, and he just wasn't as organized as she wanted him to be at first, actually. Like, she was prepared to like go in a different direction, but they ended up clicking, and she knew, like, we're gonna do it. And I don't think Patrick Leonard was too thrilled about being dumped as producer in favor of William Orbit, but
in hindsight, though, he couldn't. I shouldn't say he couldn't. I don't. This album would have been nowhere near the same if she stuck in her normal way. She knew that.
Yeah. And she knew it was time for a change because well, Madonna was still certainly a hit maker in the 90s. Like she never stopped charting high, but she did lose some ground after her peak, which does happen. But I think she just turned a lot of people away with stuff like the erotica album and the sex book. And a lot of people said she's gone too far. We're done with this. But she decided to present this new image to the world. And it also came after she did the movie version of the musical Evita, which actually was really well received for her, easily her most well received film role. But interestingly, with that, we got a new Madonna voice because she had to take voice lessons for that film because she was doing a very different style of music. She was doing Andrew Lloyd Webber songs. Of course, you got to do it differently, but now we're working with this new voice, new perspective. And yeah, like the question is, what are we going to get? How are people going to respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, just singing the Andrew Lloyd Webber songs and knowing how much that entails and knowing that she has to go in and really take voice lessons or lessons in her attempt at, it was a beautiful victory, but her attempt going in to do Evita. But on this album you can hear that change.
Yes.
In fact, and I'll probably say it a bunch as we go through, but there's snippets and pieces of Madonna that I hear in this that I immediately like, oh, let me go back and listen to that track and I want to see where it is. And it's wild to hear early Madonna against these tracks. It's insane. Now I'll leave some other nuggets in that thought for later, but it really is a different Madonna. My question for you is, because it's a very blurry time as far, not as far as my memory goes, but like trying to remember where Madonna was in the popular eye when this was coming out. Did the majority of America realize or know or had been shown her new interest in the Kabbalah, her spirituality? Had they seen that yet? Or did that, I know we saw it ultimately. I mean, she wrote the kids book and all that. And I know that was way after, but did America know Madonna as this person yet coming into this album? So there's another unexpected, you're not expecting any of that from Madonna.
No, we got this new spiritual Earth Mother side to Madonna that nobody would have ever expected from her after. I mean, this was the same woman who, again, did the sex book. People were not predicting she was going to do this, but it was what ended up happening. And with it, it did come this new electronica sound that was cutting edge for the late 90s, and particularly in America. And yeah, this was really unexpected. I think this took a lot of people by surprise, but it also gained her a lot of new admirers, really. I mean, this was easily her most critically acclaimed album ever, and a lot of people who never would have dared listen to Madonna before this were all of a sudden on board because of this new reinvention. They felt like we could actually take her seriously.
Yeah, you put it perfectly right there. She achieved, or is looking to achieve with this album, the fact that people are going to take her seriously. And I think that's huge to realize. I'm so glad you said it going into this album, because there's a lot riding on this. We haven't even started to talk about the musical differences. We've just dipped our toes in the water, so to speak, inside of our conversation right now. And there is a lot riding. This is a very, very, I feel like it could have went wrong. And in fact, I'll use this time to give you and everybody else listening a little insight into me. The first time so you asked me at the end of the last podcast if I knew this album, and I said sparsely. And sparsely was a huge understatement that I found out, because even looking at the track list, Ray of Light was the only one I knew automatically. Sitting and listening to this album for the first time, I was super underwhelmed, but in the fact of I just wasn't expecting it, so I'm mentally prepared for super upbeat, super in your face Material Girl, Vogue, Madonna that I knew, or that I thought I knew, and then I get this, and the first time I listened to it, I was like, this isn't a Madonna. Then I got to read about where she was, a new mother, and spiritually starting down the path of spiritual enlightenment, and also as an artist. And it's wild, man, because the second listen to this album took a whole new light. But the first one was not there for me, and the reason I took this time to say that is because I feel like this album could have went the wrong way. And
Yeah.
after I listened to it the first time and went and read the critical reception on it, I was blown away by what people were saying. I was like, I can't be the only person that thinks this is a terrible album. And then I went to my second listen. Then I guess we'll see from there. I was just
Yeah.
really underwhelmed. It just wasn't what I was expecting.
It's
You know?
not. And I mean, did she win back some old fans with this? Very possibly. But I don't know if everybody who loved her 80s hits necessarily gravitated to this. But as I said, it gained a lot of new followers that would have never listened to her before. So there's a bit of a trade-off there that I think we have to acknowledge. But yeah, a lot of the songs on this album would qualify as ballads.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're heavy songs. There's a lot of, I say electronica, that's a part of this, but that doesn't just make this a dance album. I think people might assume this is going to be a dance album just based on the title track, which is a dance floor banger, but really, it's not all of that. That's the ultimate dance song here. There's a lot of really moody mid-tempo songs. There are just a lot of different really subtle elements too. You really have to listen to this more than once to pick up on all the little sonic details and inspirations this album's coming from. It's just, I don't think it's necessarily something that grabs you at first listen. There were always certain songs on this album that I've loved from the minute I heard them, but others, no, not at all. And I first heard the whole album when I was like 14. And before that, I knew the singles because, I knew the song Ray of Light. That's actually the first Madonna song I ever knew. Because it was on a CD that my dad had. And I became more of a fan of hers once I learned her 80s songs. That was when I really became obsessed with her. And that really hasn't changed too much. But one year as a birthday present from one of my aunts, I got her, it was a DVD of the videos from 93 to 99, and the videos for all of the singles on this album were included. So I knew all of those songs going in, but actually hearing the whole album, we didn't have immediate streaming. So I bought the $5 CD at Best Buy and heard the whole thing. And I liked a lot of it, but parts of it definitely went over my head. And I also think even when I think the visuals helped me with this album. I definitely am going to be commenting on some of these videos because there's some wild stuff here with that too. And that's important because, yeah, once again, she was doing very new looks. We have videos with her having jet black hair, not the traditional Madonna blonde. It is, again, a new look, and that's why they call her Queen of Reinvention.
When I remember hearing about the Kabbalah interest and all of this, and that was the first picture that I remember of Madonna going into this realm. I wasn't listening to the album in 98, but what you saw on TV, I remember that jet black hair Madonna as being one of the first things I saw in this, I'll use the word loosely, this era, or not even loosely, this era of Madonna. And it was like, whoa, what the heck? I paid it no mind back then.
Just saw, she looks different.
Yeah, exactly. But you can, Queen of Reinvention is an understatement.
Yeah. Because all these years later, whenever she makes an appearance, people always have to talk about how she looks. That's always going to be.
Well, she was a sex symbol for so many years.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's still today because she was one of the most talked about people at the Grammys just for her appearance.
Yeah, heard that.
People didn't like it, but they were still talking. That was for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something she'll never be able to get away from.
No. right or wrong, she's
Right or
not.
wrong. Yep, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. But that's an entirely different discussion. We're not here to discuss plastic surgery and facelifts and all that. So
Or just the reinvention. Pin that for a bar conversation, because that's a good conversation to have.
yeah,
I'd like to have that conversation, me and you.
yeah, definitely. But anyway, yeah, as we've said, this album was really critically acclaimed, and in fact, Madonna was one of the top nominees at the Grammys that year. She was nominated for 6 awards and won 4 of them.
Yeah.
And this was even nominated for Album of the Year, but it did lose to The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Expectedly, admittedly, that was a really big release that had a lot going into it as well. I mean, in the case of someone like Madonna, who critics very early on said she's going to be over in 6 months, when she first started, that was a huge achievement. She even said at the awards show, I had to wait 16 years for this and it was worth it.
That's good for her. Do they have I looked and I didn't really find anything. Did they have words about each other's work? Madonna and Lauryn Hill? Did
I
they is
haven't
there
seen anything. I'd be curious if they did.
Me too. Me too.
Definitely. And interestingly, yeah, there was just, but the thing is, the people did respond positively to this album. This was her most successful album since Like a Prayer. And it's now at this point sold over 16 million copies worldwide, over 4 million in the US. In fact, at the time when it first debuted, it sold 371,000 copies first week in the US. At the time, that was the highest debut for a female artist, only to be broken months later again by Lauryn Hill. But interestingly, it wasn't enough to top the charts. She couldn't overtake the Titanic soundtrack.
Oh, heard that. I, debut aside, I have to ask you, do you think those numbers come from this just being a very, I'll go before that and say that, in my opinion, her albums can be very polarizing and very drama worthy, and she's always reveled in that, in my opinion. That was the
Yes.
Madonna that we knew. Do you think that the later numbers for this really came because, and again, I'm putting my opinion on this question, but this is a very approachable album. Do you think those later numbers came from the approachability of this album?
Oh, definitely. I mean, as we talk about how daring it is in some ways, there are definitely radio friendly ballads here. It wasn't easier to approach Madonna. She was doing something different. Still, people were talking, but she wasn't really pushing buttons like she was before. I mean, compare this to, up to this point, her most polarizing album was Erotica.
Yeah.
And that sold 6 million worldwide, which is not terrible by any means, but it was her lowest selling album up to that point. This sold almost triple as much.
Yeah, I mean, you could play this for your grandma.
Yeah, you could.
Just using, that example. But I remember, and I was young, but I remember the negative push away from erotica. Like, there was what it was supposed to be in the coffee table book and that whole thing, and that's who she was being then. But I remember there was a push away from it. So I'm not surprised to see the smaller numbers for erotica, because it was almost like something you don't want to get caught with. It was super racy. That's an understatement of the year.
I mean,
But this one, not so much.
yeah. And really, honestly, the whole erotica era, I think so much of it, I think the sex book really overtook the conversation. And the album's actually not, it definitely has its moments. It's definitely not as sexual as you might think it is by the title, actually.
Heard.
I don't think, but I think the conversation was really dominated by, again, what we were seeing on MTV and in bookstores, and of course in the movie theaters, with the best bad movie of all time, Body of Evidence.
Heard that. Whether that was her choice or the machine's choice, that's what we were fed as Madonna. So again, another reason why this is so risky.
Yeah, and she was trying to be more approachable in the days after Erotica. I mean, Bedtime Stories was much calmer. The big hit off of that was Take a Bow with Babyface production. She even put out a CD of her best ballads with some new songs to show, like, hey, I'm more approachable. But it was a bit more. I mean, that was safer, admittedly. This, I think, had enough of the cutting edge to it that the more indie audience could gravitate to this as well.
I agree with you. Erotica was after Dick Tracy stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was after Truth or Dare, Blonde Ambition, all of Vogue, all of that. And I mean, that was a huge peak, and a come down was probably inevitable, but it was, people were very quick to pounce on her and say, like, she's over and she's gone too far, we're done with her. But I think with this, I think we just had to learn, you can't count Madonna out, because she was almost 40 when she released this album, and again became one of the top pop stars of the moment and in the teen pop era.
It was sort of weird. I remember it. Like, yeah. It was sort of weird. Just seeing an older Madonna mixed up inside of all these young pop stars. Yeah. It was pretty weird and pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I wasn't around for it, but I have to imagine it must have been pretty wild to hear, because the success continued after this, like, of course, but I have to imagine it is kind of wild to think Madonna was sharing radio airtime with NSYNC.
Yeah.
But it sounds like she was, but that was how it was, I guess, at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, even as a young guy who didn't know, her whole catalog, Material Girl to Breathless Mahoney to the Coffee Table Book, that I won't say scarred me as a young kid, but I'll never forget seeing that book for the first time, in my younger teenage years. And then, to this, it's a wild romp there, a wild career. But it's just so wild to see her sitting in that group, like you said, with NSYNC and all the other girls, and just watching the whole way. It was pretty wild. In hindsight, even more so, but
in hindsight, even more so. But she's just somebody who will never ever go away, whether you want her to or not. She's pretty unstoppable, old Madonna. So, and I'm grateful for it. And with that all being said, I'm ready to dive on into Ray of Light.
Let's get at it.
Yeah. All right. So the album begins with a song called Drowned World / Substitute for Love. Only Substitute for Love is used in the song. Drowned World, I think, is more of to discuss the musical element of it, because this song actually has a lot of ambient music elements to it, which is pretty different. And we very quickly, we hear this ambient sound. We hear a sample of this song called Why I Follow the Tigers, which I learned it was called, and a guy saying, you see, and song begins with new Madonna voice singing, I traded fame for love without a second thought. And it's like, oh, whoa there. Okay, this is not what I was expecting to hear. Because if anything, Madonna was somebody who was upfront about being like, I like my fame, I like getting attention. That had been clear to everybody. So for her to say that, it's like, okay, you definitely actually have changed. And it's in this really neat introspective song, because she knows that fame is as she's saying, it's a substitute for love, but it's not real. And she knows that what she has now, being a mother, that is real. And she's learning this difference. But it's not just ambient. We also have a major electric guitar riff. And I've always adored this song. I first heard it when I was 10, but I always thought it just sounded really cool, first of all. And I mean, I think the insight here is incredible. I think this is genuinely a strong singer-songwriter track. And I think that's saying something, because this isn't the artist you'd expect that from, but I think this is genuinely That, and I think it's a perfect album opener. It really sets the tone for what we're about to do in a really trippy and rockin' way.
It does. It does. It's a great album opener. The intro is, like I said, the first time I listened to it, it's way slower than I expected. But for this album, it really is a great slow intro. I love everything you said, and I'm right there with you as far as this beautiful look into Madonna that we weren't necessarily sure if that was the case, or I wasn't, because you're right. She loved we thought she loved the spotlight, the limelight, the whole kit and caboodle that's wrapped up with being a pop star, especially in her example. But it's this drowned world. And I'm glad you said the ambient music that's cut by this guitar, because for me, and I'll already give some flowers here, because I really only go out on these wild tangents when I'm very inspired by what's going on. So looking into this musically, I have to think that the guitar is her, and this ambient music that we're hearing is this drowned world, this very not sharp composition that's going on in the background throughout this whole entire thing. And we'll see this as a goodbye to this drowned world as we go through, and we'll see the crispness of the musicality really shine. So I think you had said earlier in the podcast, you listen to this over and over and over again, you really pick up some very, very finite examples and finite inspirations inside of the music. And I think this is one of them. I'd like to think that this was a conscious decision on a very rounded composition, as opposed to sharp, as opposed to very sharp composition. This is more rounded, and that's that drowned feeling. I love this as an intro track. Really cool.
Yes, most definitely. And I mean, I think the drowned world thing was something she took to heart. She even named the tour after it.
Wow.
Yeah, she did. This was a single in some countries. It made it to number 10 in the UK. And there is a video which is pretty neat, but it's kind of definitely influenced by Princess Di being chased by the paparazzi. But it's a pretty neat video that ends with her holding her daughter, Lourdes, which I think is nice. So
that's awesome. I must say, I can't believe I left it out. Her voice blew me away already in the first track compared to what I had heard from Madonna. And I wonder, it was a thought I had during my listenings, but I wonder if everybody had gotten used to it because of how beautiful Don't Cry for Me Argentina was. And even though that was like a part of the musical, I feel like that was everywhere, so you could see
was
her
a radio
chops.
hit. It
Yeah,
was.
you could see her chops. So I wonder if it was as jarring back then. But for me, I have to say, coming in, I was blown away by her vocals already.
I mean, yep, but we're gonna get a lot more of them, folks. We're just getting started here. We're now on to track number 2, which is Swim, which this is a song I would say it's described as being about the healing power of water. And this one's kind of loaded. It does mention some societal ills like children killing children while the students rape their teachers, which I was kind of shocked to hear that one against this kind of, again, serene song. But she's saying we need to wash away our sin and swim to the ocean floor. And again, it has this ambient alt rock sound. And it's kind of shocking to hear her sing it in this new voice. Not this edgy rock thing that you might think. Like, you would think these lyrics would come from like an Alanis Morissette type voice. Not this, but I don't know. It's really interesting. I like this one. Not as much as I like the first song, but I do think this is a really neat song too, I think. And I just think the sound, I really do think Orbit in his own way created this water atmosphere through sound, and that's incredible that he did that. Bit of trivia, this song was recorded on the day that Gianni Versace was murdered. And I think there's some people have noted like there's a bit of a parallel here because she really was taking it to heart, like, hey, Versace's gone. We really do need to reconsider what's going on.
That's a wild one. That is definitely a trivia piece Yeah, there is some wild lyrics in here that take you back, like you touched on, but this is, like you said, a really cool number two song here. There's a little bit, for me, there's a little bit of the same tone leaking through on this intro, but we get this rock guitar again right away. And here, this rock guitar is actually over these building electronic sounds. At 48 seconds, when the bass drops on this, I love the use. You said this wooder soundscape, but I really love the use of the bass he did here. For anybody who isn't listening along or knows the track, it's the bass is really reminiscent of the old Sopranos intro. Woke up this morning. It's that same bass effect, but here it really lends itself to this underwooder effect, the way that bass drips in and out. A really nice pace for a song, even a down tempo song that is 5 minutes. There's not wasted time in this. I mean, this album really averages 5 minutes almost the whole way through, but this one here was our first dip into it all the way, and I feel like it was well done. This is a beautiful track too.
Agreed. But it can't all be moody, slow songs. We do have to pick up the pace a little bit. And we're going to do that with our next song, which is the title track, which has already been mentioned. It actually is based on the 70s song by the folk duo Curtis Muldoon called Sephirin. And Madonna got set a version done by Christine Leach, who was the niece of one of the guys in the duo. I'm not remembering which one at the moment, but William Orbit produced it, and Madonna liked it, but she decided, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to change the lyrics to, fit what I'm going to do. And it was originally over 10 minutes long, but it did get cut down to a more manageable 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And this is a song where we definitely hear her new vocal range. William Orbit actually said she sang it in a semitone higher than she was comfortable with. And you can hear it, but this is this is the classic Madonna dance track of the album. The lyrics are very different than you would have gotten before. This is this new enlightened talk of Zephyr in the sky at night, quicker than a ray of light. She's flying. I mean, again, this is spiritual. I think you get that from the title, and that's what we're hearing, this interest in spirituality. And again, just this 70s folk influence, I don't think even would have been expected. And interestingly, actually, no, I don't want to say that yet. But yeah, I think, again, it's kind of, but this still is a floor filler too. And I think that's proof of Madonna doing what she does best. Because, I mean, when it comes to who has a lot of great dances, this is the one. So, and this is another one of them.
Here we go again, starting with beautiful guitar, which is always neat, especially the way this album is getting us to fall into its rhythm. But this one here, man, you have those light guitar chords and you let this club sound come in, and then this song just screams Madonna. I mean, Madonna is just everything about the song just screams Madonna for me. Finding out that she sang this a half register above what she was comfortable with is wild, because I have a note here that I put nitpick next to, but for me, this is a very fine line for me as a Madonna listener, because I know who Madonna is coming into this sound wise. And for me, maybe it's a hot tea take, I feel like a rougher Madonna vocal from a little bit prior in the day would have aided this just a tad. And now this is nitpicking, but those angelic vocals for me are almost too clean for this club composition. They do a really cool juxtaposition in their dance here, but it's just almost too clean. That's nitpicking, man. The production and composition on this is, take out all the expletives, mind-blowing with a bunch of exclamation marks. This is a pure ecstasy song, just in the happiness and just the clubness of it. It's just a let yourself go out on the dance floor. I have listened to this about 7 to 10 times this week. Every single time I find a new sound that is not mashed together in this. This composition has so many pieces, but it's not all jumbled mess. There is some beautifully, beautifully produced sounds throughout this, and I keep finding new ones. It's a great, great track.
Yes, it is. And so speaking of happiness in the song, there was one person when they first heard the song on the radio who wasn't happy with it, and that was Dave Curtis of Curtis Muldoon. He thought, like, what, she's doing my song, I don't like that. But he changed his tune when he ended up getting 15% of the royalties for the song, and that ended up being a very nice payout, I'm sure, because this song was a huge hit. Number 5 in the US, number 2 in the UK. The video was also really well received. It was kind of like this day in the life montage that ends in a club. It's a pretty neat thing. I don't think it's the best video from this album. We're not there yet, folks. You're gonna have to wait for that. But it was definitely a cool thing that a lot of people really enjoyed, and it's always gonna be special to me because it's my first Madonna song I ever knew.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So she didn't have them on there as writing.
No, they are on there as writers.
I knew they were. I'm saying, but when it hit, who was pissed off? I'm missing that right there. Were they pissed because they weren't getting paid? They just had writing credits on it, or
no? I think he didn't. He was pissed just hearing it. He didn't know he had a writing credit. I was under the impression.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Once he found out he did, he wasn't so angry. And again, I'm sure he got a very nice payday from it after the success of this song.
Yeah, it seems to me, and even just so in this album, that she is very conscious of inspirations, and if she wants to use stuff, she's very conscious of making either amends or rightful payment, or it's weird to hear somebody getting pissed not knowing they didn't have credits. She seems to be very on top of that.
I mean, the guy had been kind of like forgotten though before this. Think about it. Like,
yeah,
the song wasn't a hit back in the day. It was a really obscure thing. So I can understand, like, he wasn't expecting a payday at that point, is the impression I'm under.
Oh, okay. That makes sense too.
But he ended up getting one, and I'm very happy for him. Good for him. Good for everybody involved with creating a fucking banger.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But speaking of collaborators, we've got a pretty neat one, I think, on our next song. Somebody from the Prince camp co-wrote track number 4, Candy Perfume Girl, co-written with Susanna Melvoin, who twin sister of Wendy and Lisa, and at one point engaged to Prince. So she's kind of a big deal in the Prince story, and I love seeing intersections between Prince and Madonna because there's quite a few of them, and of course 2 of my very all-time favorite artists who were both on Warner Brothers in the 80s. So there's a lot of interception that I love to see. But Susanna, I don't know the exact breakdown of who wrote what of the song, but Susanna stated that she kind of wrote this song after her brother Jonathan died from a heroin overdose in the mid-90s. And she said the song was inspired by the allure of drug addiction, were her words, but really it's not good. And this, from what I'm hearing, it seems to be about a very just codependent and toxic relationship. And I mean, I could see it being about drugs with these words, because like literally, what's a candy perfume girl? Literally, it totally makes sense that we're singing about drugs here. But yeah, this one actually, it's been noted, has elements of grunge music, which mind-blowing, because I can't help but think of Weird Al singing "No, we don't sound like Madonna. Of course not. We're Nirvana." He was the antithesis of grunge, and yet we have elements of that sound here, along with some of that trip-hop ambient stuff that we are used to at this point. I think this is a cool song. I will say that. But hot tea take, I think this is the gun to the head song for me, because while it's a very cool song, it is a bit oddly placed on the album, and it doesn't really fit with the spirituality that we're hearing on the other songs, certainly. And again, I appreciate its sound. It's not one I skip when I listen to the album, but it's just kind of always been there for me. I don't know, for some reason she included it on the Drowned World tour. I'm thinking of all the songs you could have done. I don't know why we picked Candy Perfume Girl other than for her to play the guitar. But other than that, what? It's a cool song, but it's not a Madonna classic.
Definitely not a classic. You've touched two of them, but I think add on the fact that it's right behind Ray of Light, and I'm not talking about Ray of Light as the banger we know it, but just as the musical composition it is. It tends to stagnate towards the middle of Candy Perfume Girl for me as far as sonically on the album, just for this little blurb here. I definitely see the grunge, inside of it. For me, it had like a Fat Boy Slim type of feeling for the beat, and I enjoyed that. The amount of sound here is great, and the production is nice, but it just doesn't hit because for me, it just doesn't hit, and it falters because it's behind Ray of Light on this album. I tried to find another spot on this album for it, but I don't think it has one. I think you touched on that quite nicely. It almost doesn't fit this album, which is weird because so far everything seems so seamless. And it doesn't seem seamless musically. Like you're not like taken away from the album, but in hindsight and critically, it just doesn't work out the best here.
I mean, it's in between the dance portion of the album, frankly. It's like we have
Yeah.
several dance songs in a row, starting with Ray of Light, except for this. And so it does kind of stick out like a sore thumb. And yeah, I just feel like they definitely could have found a better song. Actually, there is a very nice B-side called Has to Be. It was the B-side for the song Ray of Light. That would have been a better fit for the album than this song. I think a lot of fans actually would agree with that. But hey, what are you gonna do? Instead, we got Candy Perfume Girl on every edition of this album. So this could have been the Japanese bonus track or the B-side. That's all I'm saying. It
Agreed.
in comparison to everything else here, it is a bonus track. But you know what? As I said, we've got a lot more coming up here, and again, more dance songs, because this is weirdly it positioned between the grunge song is in between, yeah, dance floor fillers. But this next one's a very different one. This one is called Skin, our track 5. It was originally called Flirtation Dance, and this is the first of 4 songs here co-written with Patrick Leonard, who was a longtime collaborator, co-wrote many of her greatest 80s hits. We talked about him quite a bit on our Like a Prayer episode. If you want to go check that out, please do. And this song here, this is the most sensual song on the album. I mean, because we are, and I mean, it's interesting. On paper, these lyrics sound like erotica, like kiss me, I'm dying, put your hand on my skin. But that's not what we're getting here. This is really about a desire for true intimacy. This is not about wild sex like we were getting. This is not, my name is Dita, I'll be your mistress tonight. This is very, very emotionally vulnerable. I mean, the line, why do all the things I say sound like the stupid things I've said before? That line always gets me because it's like, oh, I've been there before. Like, it's just very relatable, but she's really bearing her soul here and craving this desire. And I think that's a big part of why the song works, but also musically, there's just so much cool stuff going on. I mean, we've got elements of Bollywood music and this distorted guitar and just all this really neat stuff going on here. It's kind of hard to explain for me, but I think it comes together beautifully, and I'm gonna say this is my favorite non-single on the album.
All right.
Oh boy.
This is our first other side of the coin. That was unexpected, but this song, it's the first to really open with these electronic sounds, and I dig that. And immediately before knowing, this is first listen notes here. Before knowing what I was getting from her lyrics, I wrote automatically sounds like introspective Madonna from something like Promise to Try. So her voice really like lends itself to the way you can feel her through her voice is what I'm trying to say. And I really got that on this track. For me, the beat is way too much for me. In my opinion, the beat is just way too overpowering in the song. And it seems like the production is starting to repeat these small ideas throughout their compositions that they've stuck the landing on them so far. But for me, when I get to Skin, it feels like the production is starting to repeat small things. I really love the Marrakesh market sounds incorporated in the background. This one's just a little bit too cluttered. I won't say that it's a terrible song or anything like that. No way, gun to the head. It's just not one of my favorites. I do like the way this one fades out. And if you guys have been listening to it for us for a while, it's not my favorite way to end a song, but I think this one finds a way to do it correctly and leaves without lingering for too long. I will give it that. But not my favorite one here.
Yeah, I have to say the outro to this is pretty epic. Just the repeated, I'm not like this all the time.
Yeah.
And put your hands on my skin. I really like how it builds to that point. Personally, I can see why somebody would find it cluttered, but for me, it works very well. And I've always enjoyed this song a lot. So, and interestingly, here's the tea on this song. Susanna Melvoin actually claims to have written the lyrics for this, but says she didn't get credit. But who knows? We weren't there. Really, who knows? I mean, she got credit on the other song, so.
And again, I'll go back to my point. Madonna seems very, very conscious of making sure everybody gets their flowers, whether it's I'm not putting you on the album and I'll pay you, or we see all these things. That's a tough pill
I
to
think
swallow.
Madonna definitely, her history, if you look at the writing credits on it, I think she's very fair in how the publishing is done, because there are times when, I mean, Papa Don't Preach, for instance, she's just listed as providing additional lyrics. She could have just credited herself as a writer, even if she added one line. You can do that, but she didn't do that. And the songs she didn't write, you see, she didn't write them. I think that she tends to be very honest in that. So if there was a dispute over it, I'm really sorry to hear that. But I don't think it quite adds up with what we know, because Madonna gives her collaborators her flowers. Their flowers, I would say.
Most definitely.
They're her flowers. She pays for them. Lord knows she can afford it.
Heard that.
But it's not all about money, because according to our next song, track number 6, Nothing Really Matters. This is a song about how love is all we need, going back to the Beatles here, that old plateau. And this one, again, we started off immediately like, when I was very young, nothing really mattered to me. But everything's changed. Nothing really matters. Love is all we need. This song's direct lyrically. Perhaps you could even say maybe a bit too on the nose. Possibly. But I think it works. It doesn't bother me. I think she gets her point across very well. And we have like a nice little dance groove to it, but it's not as intense as what we got on the previous 2 dance songs that we've had so far. Skin and Ray of Light. There's not as much going on, but I think that's actually really smart for this point in the album, because I think in a way this serves as a palate cleanser, because we're not going to be as intense. We're showing really this more, sedate thing, kind of. And a part of me does wish this song was a bit more musically dynamic, because I love a big Madonna dance song, like even the ones before this. Who doesn't love Vogue? Come on. And this is not Vogue, but I still, for this album and this point in it, I think it really works. And fortunately, now I'm going to talk about one of the remixes. This song really was a major hit in gay clubs, especially because of specifically the Club 69 remixes done by the late, great DJ Peter Rohofer, who did some awesome remixes for not just Madonna, but other artists as well, like Cher and Britney Spears. So I kind of prefer that version to the album version just because it's a bit more oonce and dynamic, more of a floor filler. But it would have been out of place on this album. And yeah, this was a single, and it got a pretty interesting video where Madonna is a geisha, another known image that wouldn't fly today, but it did happen. And yeah, fourth single for the US, fifth overall. It actually kind of flopped. It only made it to 93 on the Hot 100. Radio didn't play, and there was actually a delay in printing the CD singles, and so it didn't sell as well. And sales have always been a strong point for Madonna, but I have a copy of it on CD and vinyl. I totally freaked out one day. I looked on the website of our local record store here, Soundgarden, and they had some Madonna record singles from the 90s, and one of them was Nothing Really Matters. Like, I gotta get all of them, and I did. And among my prized vinyl possessions are my Madonna records. I'm always happy to find a Madonna rarity.
There you go. There you go. That for me is like this song. This is the vibe and the Madonna-ness, if you will, of the last track. But here it's to the perfection that I equate with her. This sound inside here of Madonna, for me, inside of Nothing Really Matters, aside from this is a really beautiful moment that I think every parent has when you have a child and a life that you're responsible for, like nothing else really matters. And I think that's where she was going, or where she was through here. But this Madonna-ness inside of this, man, there is an elegance about this song. I mean, of course, the strings add an elegance, but the sounds, even the electronic sounds that are selected for this composition here, have an elegance to them. Some stuff that screams almost cinematic level stuff. I mean, I just get this beautiful picture of like long black gloves and a black dress silhouette Madonna here. Like, think like Papa Don't Preach and Material Girl put together in one image. It just really has this elegance and Madonna-ness. I jam with this song. I love this song.
Yep. It is a good one indeed. So basically, nothing really matters, but the song does matter. Check it out. But while we say nothing really matters, there is something that would matter to us. And that would be if you subscribe this podcast wherever you're listening to us and rate us on your favorite platform, especially Apple Podcasts. We could really use some more ratings on there, especially because some jerk gave us 1 star, which was just plain rude. So you know what? Help us rectify that, because we are not a 1-star podcast. Not to toot my own horn here, or our own horn, but we are not 1 star. And we want you to hopefully help us change that, because we know you're listening, and hopefully you don't think we're a 1-star podcast. But enough about that. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Turntables and Tea Podcast, and on what's now called X, not formerly Twitter, at Turntables Tea. Nothing else has changed, just the name and the logo. We'll have all our updates on our upcoming episodes on there. So just stay tuned. And with that being said, I'm ready to get back into the album, track number 7.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And as I said, the last song was a palate cleanser, because we are really getting spiritual here, folks, with Sky Fits Heaven. I think the title says it there. Like, this one, it's got a dance beat to it, though. Like, how many spiritual songs are gonna fill the floor at the gay club? Not many, but this one will do it. It's that kind of jam. But you know, she's taking the gospel, and I really like that. And I've just really loved the chorus. It's very simple, but it's just very real. Like, isn't everyone just traveling down their own road? Think I'll follow my heart. It's a very good place to start. And they seem like simple lyrics, but they're elevated by our dance beat and the person singing it in her lovely new vocals. Yeah, another one that I really enjoy. And I think we gotta tip our hat to Patrick Leonard here, who again co-wrote this song. I think that he kind of helped rein in the spirituality of it, because I think this definitely could have gone overboard with that. You can tell by the title, Sky Fits Heaven. This could have gone really haywire, but I think that we got to give him his props for helping bring it together because, again, we can't undersell his collaborations. This is the man who co-wrote Like a Prayer and Express Yourself. So gotta add him in there too. Another one I really enjoy.
Yeah, this is a great composition. Um, of course, that driving techno composition that you're talking about that's going to fill the dance floor. It is a really awesome, well put together song. I can't shake the fact that the melody of this song, especially the melody of the refrain, for me could sit by itself without that beat and have been, in my opinion, a Madonna hit. I challenge anybody to just really take that melody out, hum it, and it is an earwig. It's a really neat look at how this album came together. For me, it's the true look. This 7-track right here, Sky Fits Heaven, is a very true look into the album as a whole. It is this evolution of Madonna here. And I really enjoy it. This is a very, very cool track to really understand what this album is to Madonna and to her music, period.
Yeah, most definitely. But it's funny you say like this could have easily been a hit, even though it wasn't a single. It made it the 41 on the US dance charts.
Oh, I believe it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like the melody alone could have been. It's such a beautiful song.
It really is. So, and people really took to it. I mean, DJs remixed it enough for it to make it to that point. So, a deserved fan favorite for sure. And we're gonna keep that spirituality going big time with our next song, Shanti Astanji. This song was inspired by Sanskrit prayers that Madonna chanted before yoga. And as a result, yeah, this song is mostly in Sanskrit, which first off, what a bold choice for a pop album from anybody. I mean, whoa, mind blowing. Who would have thought it? And like that's like a separate niche project somebody would do. They that if they're going to make an album of chants, they're not going to put it in the middle of their album. But no, she really did do that. And but somehow I think it works. This has a good beat to it. I think it's compositionally sound. I don't know what she's saying, but I can tell as a part of this album that it is meaningful to her and her spirituality, even if it's not something that I literally don't understand, and maybe not even something I practice. I don't do yoga. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most spiritual song here. And I don't like it as much. I wouldn't say, is this the song I go back to again and again on the album? No. It's a bit too off the wall for that, especially when we have a beautiful song like the ones surrounding it. There's more than one of them. But I mean, I give her props for doing this. She wanted to take this idea like of her life, these ideas she's now following as part of her evolving spirituality, which is a variety of things. She was really delving into a lot of different religious thoughts in a deeper than the Catholicism that she was brought into. We're seeing like the Sanskrit and Kabbalah and all of that coming through here. And I think it's interesting, definitely.
It is interesting. It is a very, very honest and open work. It is something that I love that it was done when it could be done. I'll have to say, and usually I don't do the pessimistic tone on this, but I'll have to say, unfortunately, I think this would dabble along the lines of people getting pissed for cultural appropriation just because of the pureness of it. I mean, she's singing the whole song in Sanskrit, and I love that. This is a really neat composition. I will not take any more away from it by even talking about the shift in the paradigm of thought as a people, but it is such a beautiful thing. This is literally, from what I could find, her own mantra, and she's singing it in this Sanskrit. And I know you said you didn't know what it said, but I found a summation translated, and it goes, I worship the guru's lotus feet, awakening the happiness of self revealed by beyond comparison, working like the jungle physician to pacify loss of consciousness from the poison of existence. In the form of a man up to the shoulders, holding a conch, discus, and sword, thousand headed, white, I bow respectfully, peace is that mantra. Such a beautiful, powerful thing. I go back to this very honest work. That is the most honest work you I have goosebumps talking about it right now. That's the most honest work that you could ever do as an artist, sharing your mantra with the world. In fact, that's what we strive as artists to do throughout our whole entire lives, is to share a mantra. But this actual mantra is such a beautiful, honest work, and that's why I like this one. Yeah, musically, composition, it's neat, but this is a very cool piece of art here.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the cultural appropriation. Actually, the aspect of this era that's gotten retrospectively or back then that's gotten the most flack is actually the geisha images in the video for Nothing Really Matters.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think she means it in a malicious way. I think she genuinely appreciates different cultures, and
yeah.
But I think she got that even back when Vogue came out. She even got crap for cultural appropriation.
Most definitely. This, for me, after Sky Fits Heaven, is a really genius way to transition into the last third of the album.
Yes.
And it's perfect in that aspect.
Yes, and interestingly, this song was the B-side for the next track, which was the album's lead single, Frozen.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That's bold, man. A B-side on Sanskrit for Madonna.
Very bold.
That's mind-blowing.
She was not playing around in this era. She was out to show it differently, as if this new single didn't show that already. This is a song, it's our last song here co-written with our friend Patrick Leonard, sadly, but they wrote this song, Frozen, and it was inspired by a movie called The Sheltering Sky, which I've never seen. I'm curious to see it if it inspired this song, though. And she said she kind of wanted to create something lush and romantic, and we get that element, especially with the lovely string arrangements here from Craig Armstrong. But we also have all that electronica and these bleeps and bloops, and this is quite a song. Because really, it's just kind of, it's dark and foreboding in a way anybody had heard from a Madonna song up to this point. I mean, the closest I think anybody would have gotten would have been Bedtime Story, which was written by Bjork, so that's its own entity. But no, this is a Madonna composition, and I mean, she's singing to this person like, you're frozen when your heart's not open, but if I could melt your heart, we'll never be apart. And these lyrics, I think these are lovely lyrics on their own, but they're just elevated by this soundscape that we're hearing in this song. Just all the bleeps and bloops, just those little like da-na-na, just that little sound. Just so much going on in this song. It's a very neat composition, but again, it still has the classic, it's still at its essence a classic Madonna ballad in its own way. And I think that's part of why it did so well. This was being the lead single, of course, there was natural anticipation, but it was a really big hit. It made it the #2 in the US and #1 in the UK. So, and this song actually did really stand the test of time, because in December of 2021, the Canadian producer Sickick remixed it and it went viral on TikTok. And as a result, Madonna then released 3 more remixes of it. I really got sick of seeing her post her new Frozen remixes on social media. It's like, we get it. You're another remix. We didn't need 4 of them, I don't think. But you know what? If it got this song more attention, I'm happy for it. I think this is a beautiful and brilliant song.
And then she used it after all those remixes. She used it for the lead single for like a compilation, right? Or something like that. I thought I read that. I thought that was pretty
So
cool that she would do that.
yeah, there was a compilation released last year of her 50 number one dance hits, but none of those, they're old remixes from like it's an
Gotcha.
original, one of the original 1998 mixes of Frozen is included.
Gotcha.
Not one of the new ones, but it did help promote that project, and it was certainly better than some of the other remixes done after. I'll definitely take this over Material World with Saucy Santana any day. So
I'll tell you right now, you don't have to remix this song for me.
no, you don't.
I enjoy it. Very cinematic composition inspired by
Yes.
cinema. I always tend to love those. The Indian inspired drums, the Middle Eastern inspired drums seem to really follow us into this track in a little Easter egg to the song before, and it's just really it for as full and powerful as a composition as it is. It really makes sure not to be too heavy and celebrate the vocals, and that's what I love about it. Like her vocals are really great. This is a beautiful ballad. This composition is so full and powerful, but she still is the main focus, and that attention to that fine line is where this song soars for me.
Yeah, those definitely. And so it does. And I love that you mentioned the cinematic quality of it because it gives me a chance to talk about the music video for this song because oh boy, so I mentioned earlier when I was 10 I got the video DVD of 93 to 99 with all the videos from this album in addition to others, but this video, the first time I saw, like I was 10, blown away, floored. Madonna in the Mojave Desert, long jet black hair, long dress, just looking at her is stunning. But then there's all these additional effects. I mean, she turns into a flock of black birds, a black dog, liquid at one point.
Oh, I remember that one. Okay.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild video, and but just she is so striking to look at. I think, regardless of your knowledge of her, whether it was new at the time or not, it's just such a unique thing. And again, against a beautiful thing. And they were freezing cold when they did it, but they suffered. They suffered and made a beautiful, beautiful piece of art. This is one of my favorite music videos of all time. This is why Madonna's the queen of the video. It's because of pieces like this. And that I love the song on its own, but that of course did elevate it for me. Truly a beautiful synthesis. And I've seen Madonna in concert twice, and this is between those two albums. This is the only one from that album I've gotten to hear live.
Mm.
And but it was Madam X tour I went. It was the highlight of the show. It was a very beautiful moment. There actually was a video of her daughter Lourdes doing a dance along to it while Madonna sang behind the video screen, but you could see through it. It was definitely the highlight of the show. For me, it was so good. Honestly, I felt like, that was worth the price of admission for me, even if there were some other songs I didn't like as much earlier in the show, if I'm being honest. But I was like, you know what? At least I got to hear Frozen, and what a treat that is. But I'm also 100% sure she's going to do it on the Celebration tour once it commences because of all those damn remixes. There's no way she's not doing Frozen, but I'll be happy to hear it then too when I go.
There you
And
go.
of course, I'm sure we'll hear the title track on the tour too. It's a greatest hits tour. So, but yeah, that's the power of Madonna. Just one performance, I felt like I got my money's worth, and I paid. That's all I'm saying. I paid. But interestingly, the next song, when I talk of live Madonna, it's one that's never been performed on the tour, shockingly, because it was a single and a hit. This is The Power of Goodbye. This is the first of 3 songs in a row co-written with Rick Knowles. He had written a lot of hits for Belinda Carlisle up to this point, including Heaven is a Place on Earth, and also he also co-wrote quite a few songs with Stevie Nicks up to this point. we even talked about some of them in our episode on Stevie Nicks' Rock a Little. If you want to go listen to that once you're done with this, we would love that. But yeah, this is kind of admittedly after all we've gotten, it's kind of a standard breakup ballad. And at this point, she was no longer with the father of Lourdes, Carlos Leon. So it may very well be partially inspired by him. But yeah, this one, this is gonna sound like a hot tea take and kind of harsh, but it really isn't. It's just because of what it's coming after. I think this song is kind of Frozen Light. Like, just musically, it's not quite as dynamic. It doesn't hit as hard. But as I said, Frozen's a really high mark to reach. I think in its own right, this is a very nice tune. And it does have some elements of electronica, but it's still, this is definitely, I think, just think on its own terms, this is the most radio-friendly song here, I think. And it's not surprising to me that it did well and was a single. It made it up to 11 in the US and 6 in the UK. And I think that like Madonna can knock out songs like this really whenever the hell she wants, but she does it really well. And to call it Frozen Light is nitpicking, because that's a song that's a light version of Frozen, I think still qualifies as a lovely and beautiful song.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful song. I almost see it as and I already played my hand, but I already see it as a middle piece to this and the next song. So for me, these three songs, and I actually found, I'll talk about it a little later after track 11, but I found some people that thought the same thing, which was crazy. But these three pieces really have a unifying quality, and this is the middle piece for me. So I can see where you're going with the Frozen Light. It's definitely there. My favorite line on the album, my favorite two lines on the album: freedom comes when you learn to let go. Creation comes when you learn to say no. I love that. And this for me is a perfect tagline for this album, because she is saying no to machine ditties and things like that. She is letting go of what seems to be this ego. She's learning to let go of ego inside of the spirituality. So the power of goodbye takes on a new meaning, at least with me, because with me, she's saying goodbye to old Madonna, to previous Madonna. And I like that. I like that about this song. But I can feel that, and it's there musically, composition wise. It tends to almost be that same thought process musically. It doesn't go too far away from Frozen, so I'm right there with you as far as them being almost like companion tracks.
Yeah, but also I can't believe I didn't say here, her vocal here is really beautiful. We're really getting the nuances of her new range in this song. And actually, this is how like strong her vocal is. When I heard this song, I thought to myself, you know who I could imagine covering this of all people? Celine Dion.
Oh wow, heard that.
I mean, that is if she ever performs again because of her health issues. I certainly hope she does. But Celine, if Madonna doesn't want to do this song live, I think you should.
I mean, what a shout out to Madonna as an evolving artist from one of her biggest fans, saying that you could hear Celine Dion doing this track is a phenomenal accolade. That's flowers right there.
Yeah, because and honestly, I'm just going to say it. Unfortunately, there hasn't been an album with as strong of vocals since this one. I think some of that has to do with poor production choices. In some cases, it wasn't what they were going for. But I mean, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here. One of her new releases this year, she has a song out with The Weeknd called Popular. And I'm not the biggest fan of The Weeknd. I found a lot of his songs to be overrated and overplayed, but I really enjoyed this song. And I was really blown away by I felt like she sounds so good. Like this is so well produced. Her voice, I mean, it gave me those hearing her now. I was like, this gives me some Ray of Light vocal vibes, and I was so happy to hear that. And yeah, with that, just throwing it out there, I hope the Weeknd and Madonna work together again. He said he would love to produce for her, and after hearing this song, I think he'd do a really good job.
There you go. I'm glad you think that because, of course, you would like to produce for Madonna. It's Madonna, but
I mean,
that
yeah,
you know.
but I mean, of course, I don't know if I would be mad if she called William Orbit again too. Why not?
Heard.
Though a lot of people didn't like it the last time they worked together, but that's a discussion for a different time. I can go on a lot of Madonna tangents if you can't tell, listeners.
Hey, that's how. Hey, you love it.
I do, and but again, yeah, we are kind of continuing. This is kind of like the moody ballad section of the album, and we have our next one in this trilogy, which is To Have and Not to Hold. And yeah, this one's pretty neat. It has elements of bossa nova Brazilian music, which okay, pretty cool to get that in there. First of all, Rick Knowles said they were specifically inspired by the singer Astrud Gilberto. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the Portuguese language, those names. I might be messing up now. But anyway, back to the song. But this song, it's about just a love that's not equal. It's like you are to have and not to hold. You're there, but I can't have all of you. And what a real beautiful thought to put into a song. And I think it's done just really well here. I mean, it's just it has this lovely meditative feel, and even just the bum ba dum bum bum bum. It's just so, and the chant of Abahu Purushakaram, another chant. It's just so. I mean, in some ways, these lyrics are really heartbreaking, but it's also a very calming song, and but it's also got this bossa nova to it. But all these disparate elements really work well together. I think this is another stunning song.
Stunning is a great word to use. I was blown away that you said the bossa nova thing because I was trying to write the style musically, you know, like I do going through, and my first note, and I couldn't find it anywhere throughout looking this up, but I love this almost silent bossa nova beat here. It's so understated. It's so beautiful. What a really, really neat beat for this awesome song. You know, this is for me a completion, or for this album, a completion of Madonna becoming this spiritually open being and you know, and a new artist, so to speak. And that meditation, that happiness that we're feeling inside of this song is only aided by these Indian inspired tones that she hits throughout the vocal here. I really love it. There were authors, Alan Metz and Carol Benson wrote in the Madonna Companion that Frozen, Frozen, The Power of Goodbye, and To Have and Not to Hold formed a dream trilogy, during which Madonna does a monologue with herself talking about divinity. And I love that. And that's what I was talking about. I found there's somebody else who thought as crazy as I did, I guess. But it really is. It's beautifully stated throughout these three songs, this wild monologue that she's having about this transformation. And it ends, this trio of songs ends with this beautiful composition here. Really well done.
Yes, another beautiful song. And now we are onto our penultimate song, our last collaboration with Rick Knowles. This is Little Star, which was a song dedicated to her daughter, Lourdes. Knowles even said that this song was kind of just very stream of consciousness. And I could see that. I mean, this is definitely a song that really, really could have gone wrong, I think. I mean, she's talking about her daughter being like little star and butterfly. God gave a present to me. This really could have gone in a really trite Hallmark card direction. But is it the song I go back to on this album again and again? No. but I'm not going to skip it either, because I do think that even if it might be a bit on the nose, I do think it's sincere. I can tell this is her new reason. Like, we've made it clear, like, she's a mother now, she's enlightened, and that's an important element of this enlightenment. And we have to have a song, I feel like, dedicated to her daughter, and I think this is a really nice one. There's certainly worse songs that pop stars have written for their children than this one, but I mean, it's not what you can't hate on it. It's a song for her daughter. It's a lovely tune. So yeah, I can't, but I do think it musically, I think it's a nice little song, and I think having Orbit in there like helps it still kind of fit with the rest of the album. So I'm not mad at this one. I like Little Star.
Yeah, stream of consciousness is there. I definitely feel that. I feel like that sincerity mixed with stream of consciousness is why this song doesn't fail. It definitely winds the album down, which is neat, or starts to wind it down going in to the final track, but it has that freshness. And I think you hit it right on the head there. I think that freshness comes from Orbit in this case, really rounding out this composition. So it's not that it's a sappy mother's song, but so that it doesn't feel out of place on this album. And I think he did a great job there. This is the shout out to my kid song, but as a new mother, almost like and I'm not even trying to draw a comparison because I don't want to get in a fight over here, but almost
to Zion.
The Zion, exactly. Almost like a Zion.
No, it doesn't. These albums were released in the same year. There is a parallel there, and done in different styles, but both beautiful songs.
Yeah, man. So this is that, and it doesn't take me away from the album, which is something, like you said, could have easily happened with this song.
Very easily, but fortunately it didn't, and it actually, weirdly enough, leads us into our final song, which is a 180 in many ways, but it does connect. Our final song is Mer Girl. So this song, obviously with becoming a mother of Madonna, it got Madonna thinking about her own mother. And for those who don't know, Madonna lost her mother, Madonna Sr., when she was only 5 years old. Her mother had breast cancer and died at the age of 30. And she discussed this song actually at a concert in 2016 called Tears of a Clown, where she performed deep cuts and dressed as a clown. Okay, go off, girl, do your thing. But she discussed the inspiration of this song, and it's actually quite literal. It's she was visiting her father's farm. He owns a winery, so he has a farm, and one time she went for a run and it started raining, and she just kept going and ended up at her mother's grave. And she said, like, it looked like nobody had been there in a while. It was really grown over, but she was there, and she just ran back and wrote this song. And so in a lot of ways it is literal. This song really isn't, it's more of a poem than a song. It doesn't have a pop song structure. It's definitely long form. Like, I ran and I ran and I ran. Like, you could totally analyze this. The poetic devices here used in your English class totally could happen. So when I talked about there were songs here I really didn't get for a long time, this is the one I was referring to. For the longest time, I thought, I don't like this song. It's very depressing. Like, it's very slow. And there's just, I mean, the backdrop's pretty sedate. Again, I think it's more of a poem. It's not a song. And just such a dark note to end an album on. I just was like, no, it doesn't do it for me. I don't care for this song. But as you get older, life can happen. And I previously mentioned on our Subtract episode, I had a couple years ago, I had a friend who passed away unexpectedly from a drug overdose. And it was really a moment for me that really got me thinking about a lot of things. And one day I listened to this song and I thought to myself, I finally think I get this song. Because I see this song as Madonna looking for answers. Like, I didn't run to a grave, but it was such a confusing moment for me. It was one of those things. I'm just like, why did this happen? I have so many unanswered questions. I don't get this. And I think this song really illustrates that in a poignant way. And so it's not going to be the song I run to on this album. It's not an easy listen. However, I do think it has a place, and I'm happy to say that I finally get the song now. And it's an important piece of the puzzle here because, of course, she was going to reflect on her mother with becoming a mother. So I do think it's important that we included a piece of that here.
That's wild. I never knew the anecdote about her running to her mother's grave, which is, and just to hear how you took it as well, they're just both mind-blowing things. For me, was just looking into the lyrics and really trying to understand it as well. And going through this, I thought she had, or was saying this was a retrospective to her life. This song for me is a very dreamlike song. I call it a song on a very loose interpretation of a song. You know, this is a very dreamy, psychedelic outro. I say psychedelic in the sense of like a spiritual journey, or like this deep place that you have to get to come out to the other side. And that's what this ends up sounding like to me, where I had taken it as her still, she says, you know, I'm still running away. That's the last thing we hear before this album ends. And I had taken it almost as her seeing her previous life as a person, and running away from it. And she's still running away. Some wild thoughts, but a very artistic piece to end this album. I think it's very fitting to end this album with this, rather than have this be some little piece in the middle of it, because it gives such a almost like loop back into the start of the album. And it also gives us this really inspired, enlightened spiritual adventure to go on with her one last time before we leave this. I like the way this last track, whatever you want to call it, is done. It's really neat.
Yes, most definitely. Quite a note to end an album on. And there we have it, Ray of Light, the album I walked into by picking on our Lauryn Hill episode. I walked into it and gave that take, saying I think this should have won the Grammy for the album of the year. And you know, there's an argument to be made for both, in all fairness. But I think I hope I showed that I was not completely crazy for saying that. I don't think I was. This just hit differently for me. So with that being said, I'm very curious as to what your grade of the album is.
I'll tell you what, you definitely weren't off as far as it being a candidate, especially inside of that conversation. I have already stated so far this evening that the first time I listened to this, I was like, oh, you got to be joking me. Like, what is this? Because I was expecting a Madonna almost cookie cutter mold that I had known and enjoyed throughout life. But getting down with this album and really seeing what it was about, and going through it, it is full of musical genius. I don't even think I used genius this podcast yet, but it is full of musical genius. It is full of very, sometimes we say on the nose in a terrible light, but some very on the nose, spot on inspired moments. From front to back, there really isn't a spot where it falters in its pacing, and much more so in its storytelling. We didn't really touch on it as much as I had anticipated or planned, but this really tells the exact story of where Madonna is here without shoving it down your throat, and can only be elevated by multiple listens in my opinion. This is a beautiful album, and for that I give it an A.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I really, even though I said that before, I really wanted to. This is one of the albums, actually, I thought to my, like, back of my head, I didn't share what I think we must discuss, but this was one always in the back of my head. We got to do a Ray of Light episode. I'm so glad that you think of it so highly, because yeah, it's one I've known for a long time, but it's one that it stays with you. It doesn't go away for me because there's so many layers here. It's one that I can keep going back to, and I think everything you said really sums up what this album is. And I think it's something that a lot of people aspire to, and whether they have or haven't is a different discussion, of course, but I think we still have this beautiful original. And again, there isn't really a faltering spot. There's no song here I can say this song is a complete skip, this song sucks. And this might be the bias showing a bit, but I'm going to give this an A+.
There you go.
So
is that our first A+ ever?
No, we've done several before. Actually, now with that being said, the for a while since we held off on A+ until this year when we gave them to The Dance by Fleetwood Mac.
That's right.
I held off on them, so now I'm going to change a former grade. Before I gave Like a Prayer an A, now I am going to change that to A+ as well.
A retrospective A+. I love it.
It's not the only one I do, but since the moment is here, I'm going to do it. It's in my these are both in my holy trinity, I guess you could say, of Madonna albums. The ones that are the most the best to me, and the other one we'll probably get to eventually, but it won't be this week because, as I said before, we're doing some comparisons. And Madonna was not the only major pop star to release a personal work at this time, a deeply introspective look into herself and where she was. Another person did as well, another major player, one Janet Jackson, with her album that came out just months before this, The Velvet Rope. And her personal things she had to say were different than this. There's a bit more social commentary, and it comes from a more R&B hip-hop sound, of course, thanks to production from her old friends Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, but I think they are interesting companion albums in a way. I can't help but think of them both, and I think they both deserve to be celebrated, but we're still going to compare because we want to hear which one you think is better. And so we're going to be doing that album next week, and I'm very excited for it.
Super excited. Were all three of them up for Best Album?
No, The Velvet Rope was not nominated.
I'll tell you
for Best Album.
And I didn't say if you were right or wrong, and I won't. But I will say between this and Miseducation, I would not, and I've said this once before, but again, in this case, I would not want to be a judge on that committee.
You said the same thing for
Beyonce and
Harry.
Taylor Swift. Or Harry, yeah, Beyonce and Harry. Yeah.
You don't want to be...
deal here. No.
Yeah.
That's way too close. Way too close.
And it was a stacked year. It was all it was actually all women nominees. We also had Shania's Come On Over, Garbage's Garbage 2.0, and Sheryl Crow's The Globe Sessions.
Wow. So
interesting, cool stuff, I think.
Janet's got her work cut out for her, man.
She does, but let's see how she does it. That's all I gotta say.
She's a resilient Jackson. She's got this.
That she is, and I think it's another classic album that there's a lot to dive into with it. Though once again, we're skipping all the silly spoken interludes. She just wanted to fill CD space. As we saw before. But either way, we're very excited to be doing it. Thank you for listening to this one. We are looking forward to being together again with you all next week. But until then, go deep and get some sleep.
Peace!